Welcome back to Studio 10.
You can meet a New York Times best-selling novelist in Fairhope today. Chris Bohjalian is the author of 17 books, including his latest novel, Close Your Eyes, Hold Hands. It's about a teenager who loses her family in the aftermath of a nuclear meltdown. We're happy to have Chris here on Studio 10 to talk about the new novel and a meeting today in Fairhope, which you can come out and meet Chris. Chris, good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, thank you so much for being here with us. This is the novel right here. I have it in my hands. What a plot here. This sounds very interesting. Tell the folks a little bit about this novel.
Sure. It's the story of Emily Shepard, a 16-year-old girl, a cutter. She's popping OxyContins as if they were M&Ms, and she's a desperate young Emily Dickinson scholar, and she's homeless after the fictional lone nuclear plant in Vermont has a Fukushima cataclysmic-sized meltdown.
All right, so during the commercial break, I asked you this question, which I want to follow up now after you explained that plot to us. How do you get the ideas like this?
You know, when my daughter, who's 20, read the rough draft of this book, she said something to me that was really astute. She said, "Dad, take this as a compliment because I mean it that way, but your sweet spot as a novelist is seriously messed up young women." and she's right. This book had its origins when I was talking to a social worker in northern Vermont who shared with me how so many of the young kids were trying to survive against the witheringly cold northern Vermont Lake Champlain winters by building igloos made of trash bags filled with frozen leaves against the cold. And I knew instantly, almost alchemically, that I wanted to write about one of those kids.
Now, we know that this is fictional, as you mentioned, but is it set in present day? Is it set in the future? When is the time period for this novel?
Set right now. Vermont has a nuclear plant. It's actually being decommissioned right now. It'll close by the end of this year. But the fact is, we do have a lot of nuclear plants in this world, and there's always the danger of a Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, or Chernobyl. I didn't write this book as an anti-nuclear novel by any stretch. I wanted to write about a kid in trouble. But it was still really interesting to me to write about the dystopian chaos that follows a meltdown.
The exploration of what would happen in the event of the nuclear meltdown. Now, you've been doing this for a long time now, 17 novels. How do you mentioned how you came up with the idea for this one, but what has this career path been like, and how do you keep coming up with these great stories? We mentioned your New York Times bestseller, extremely successful. How does this all work?
Usually the ideas come from my neighbors, from dinner parties, from something I will see in the newspaper. My book Midwives, about a midwife on trial for manslaughter after a home birth goes tragically wrong, was inspired when I was having dinner, and the woman sitting next to me was the local lay midwife. And when she heard that my wife and I had traveled 32 miles in the still of the night to have our daughter delivered, she said, laughing, "If you'd used me, you could have had Grace in your bedroom, and you could have caught her." And I'd never heard the verb catch used before in the context of birth, and I was all in to explore this.
Wow. Well, fascinating stuff. This is just one of your novels, your latest novel. Now, as we mentioned, there's a great chance for our viewers to come meet you today. Tell us about the big event.
I will be at the Venue at noon. It is sponsored by the incredible independent bookstore, Page and Palette, and I would love to meet a lot of readers here in Mobile.
And are we going to be doing some book signings as well?
Oh, I'll sign any books. I'm not proud.
Sounds fantastic. And, of course, we want you to pick up your copy of Close Your Eyes, Hold Hands. The storyline here sounds just fascinating. I can't wait to read it for myself. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. Pizza's a tough act to follow.
Pizza? Well, you know, pizza is a tough act to follow. It's delicious. That's what you can say. But you did a great job. This is a great novel, and the pizza's great as well. So Studio 10's just having a great show today, Chastity.
Absolutely. We're keeping up with the great show theme. Dozens of